Hi everyone. Today we will see what is angle of Loll. It is the most dangerous and undesired condition of ship stability. You can see this diagram here. The vessel is heeled to an angle theta and GZ is 0, which means there is no righting lever. This vessel will not return to upright condition because there is no righting lever. So this is the condition of angle of Loll. Now we go through the various steps or stages through which the vessel passes, and when this situation occurs, how it occurs, why it occurs, and how to prevent it from occurring, and also how can we correct it if ever unfortunate thing happens. This is a vessel here in upright condition, and if we notice, the center of gravity G is above metacenter. This is called unstable equilibrium. Center of gravity G lies above transverse metacenter. This vessel, if this vessel is subjected to any external force by wind and waves, then what happens to this vessel? That we will see in the next slide. But first, let's talk about how it happens and how can we prevent it from happening. So this is a typical case called negative initial metacentric height. GM is negative. G is above metacenter. Kg is greater than Km. K is keel. Kg is greater than Km. Primarily, the most probable cause of this condition is heavy cargo on deck and lighter cargo below deck. So during the stow plan, before we discharge or load cargo, we need to calculate the ship stability and ensure that the departure condition, arrival condition, the worst intermediate condition, all three conditions, vessel is satisfied from stability point of view and GM is positive. Not only the end of the cargo operation, during the cargo operation, we must have a sequence in which the cargo loading or discharging will take place. For example, on container ships, maybe we are loading heavy containers on deck on certain bay, and in some other way, the containers are being discharged from the cap inside the lower hold. And if we haven't worked out during this stage, it may be possible that GM may become negative and the vessel will heel at berth. So not only the end of the cargo operation, we need to also make sequence. Also, it's possible that sometimes we have to carry out ballast exchange. So suppose a ship called a car carrier, which is already having a low GM, and if they perform a ballast exchange at sea, whereby they pump out some double bottom tank without checking the stability conditions, the ship may reach negative GM and then can loll over to a large angle. So, in other words, we have got the procedures. We have IMO intact stability code, which provides a initial stability criteria. Initial height of metacenter must not be less than 0.15 meter. At the same time, we have to comply with damage stability criteria, and thereby we have to comply with the GM limit curve, which is plotted against the ship's draft, and the vessel must be in the safe zone on that limit curve all the time. Similarly, when carrying out any ballast exchange, every stage of the ballast exchange sequence we must work out the drafts, GM, and trim, etc. to ensure that at no stage the GM becomes negative. Also, another factor is, for example, a vessel carrying timber on deck. Timber absorbs moisture and water at sea. So this can cause the deck cargo weight to increase. I mean, it is assumed that the weight of deck cargo may increase by 10% on arrival. So this should be calculated before we start loading, and how much what will be the GM, departure GM, and arrival GM. Also for this, there is a code of safe practice for ships carrying timber deck cargo, which provides guidance not only about the moisture, also about the ice. If you're going to North Atlantic conditions where ice accretion may take place. So the loss of GM due to deck cargo weight increasing also should be kept in mind. Then a very important aspect is the free surface. There should not be unnecessary slack tanks. The best condition is either a tank is pressed up or is empty. Otherwise, the minimum number of tanks should be slack. Means we have to do everything possible to minimize the free surface, because free surface causes a virtual loss of GM. And also we have to keep in mind that during the voyage, vessel will be consuming bunkers from DV tanks, which will also cause the G to go up. Sometimes during firefighting, it has been seen on some car carriers, if there is a fire on higher decks and during the firefighting, the water collects, a large amount of water collects. The draining arrangement is not adequate. This creates a lot of free surface, and after the firefighting was finished, the fire was extinguished, but the ship heeled over to a large angle of Loll because of the loss of GM due to free surface on deck. So now let's see, suppose for some reason the situation has now come and the ship's center of gravity is above metacenter. First of all, during loading, even at berth, we should get an idea. We will come to know the vessel is behaving in an abnormal manner as she is just flopping from one side to the other side. If we get at berth, we don't come to know once we cast off and the tugs are pulling. As soon as the tugs start pulling, the vessel will heel to Angle of Loll. If the initial GM was negative, the vessel will heel to Angle of Loll. And at the same time, when the tugs are still fast, she can be brought back to the alongside and then readjust the cargo. So now we consider suppose vessel is at sea and this is a situation, negative metacentric height is there. There is wind and waves from the port side. Remember that Angle of Loll can occur on any side, port or starboard, depending upon the direction from which the wind and waves are causing the ship impact. So, for example, if the wind and waves are from port side, then what happens to this vessel? The vessel will heel to starboard. And as you can see now, here is the metacenter and here is our center of gravity, which is above the metacenter. As soon as the vessel has even a small angle of heel, the buoyancy force from B is now acting from B1, from the lower side, and the weight is acting down from G. We can see that these two forces are forming a couple which is not trying to bring the ship back to upright condition. This couple is actually causing further capsizing moment. You see this here, the expanded diagram. This is the buoyancy force and this is the ship's weight. This is GZ, is the lever between them. And if you see this condition very carefully, you will see that it is creating a capsizing moment. And the ship will now continue to heel because there is no righting moment, there is no righting lever, she just has a capsizing lever. So she will just abruptly, just flop over to a large angle of heel And as she continues to heal, the center of buoyancy will shift more outward, and at some stage, the center of buoyancy may come directly under center of gravity. Depending upon the geometric form of the vessel, if we are lucky, this vessel will then stop healing because there is no capsizing lever. Center of gravity and center of buoyancy, the new center of buoyancy, they are vertically in line with each other. There is no capsizing lever anymore. So ship will stop healing and she will come to rest. Also at the same time, there is no righting lever. So we say GZ is 0 and this is the angle of Loll condition. If this vessel heals further, suppose the wind force increases and the vessel heals beyond the angle of Loll, then it has been seen that the vessel will then have a small positive GM. That means she will have a righting lever, and this righting lever will try to bring her back to angle of Loll. And if the heel reduces lesser than the angle of Loll, again the capsizing lever will develop and she will come back to angle of Loll. So this vessel will oscillate about angle of Loll. In this condition, even if there is a positive GM, but it's very weak, very small positive GM is there, and even the righting lever GZ also are small. This we will study now a GZ curve later on, and first is we see how to calculate this angle of Loll. To calculate GZ, we have a formula called GM sin theta, which is only applicable up to small angles of heel. Depending upon ship to ship, the small angle may be 5 degrees or 7 or up to maximum up to 10 degrees. Up to small angles of heel only, GZ can be calculated using the formula GM sin theta. But at larger angles of heel, we can use a wall-sided formula, which assumes the vessel sides are parallel and they are wall-sided vessel. But this formula is also approximate and it will be accurate only up to the point that deck edge emerges. So before the deck edge emerges, up to that point, the wall-sided formula can be used, which is GZ is equal to sin theta and GM plus half BM tan square theta. At angle of Loll, GZ is 0. As we saw, there is no lever. There is no righting lever, no capsizing lever at angle of Loll. Ship is at rest. So we put 0 for GZ and 0 is sin theta, GM plus half BM tan square theta. But sin theta cannot be 0 because theta cannot be 0. There is an angle. So that means GM plus half BM tan square theta is 0, and this gives me tan theta is under the square root of minus 2 GM upon BM. This GM is the initial negative GM when the vessel was upright, and BM also when the ship was upright. This will give the angle of Loll. And what is that positive GM at angle of Loll? That can also be found by the formula 2 times the initial GM divided by cos of angle of Loll. Theta is angle of Loll here. So we have 2 times initial GM divided by cos of angle of Loll. So roughly the positive GM at angle of Loll is twice the initial negative GM, but it will change the sign. Initial GM will be negative. The GM at angle of Loll is positive. Let's study the GZ curve of this vessel. This is the GZ curve of the vessel, which is not to scale. It is just for explanation purpose. You can see this. This is the heel in degrees on the x-axis, and y-axis is the GZ values. positive on the upper side and negative on the lower side. If this vessel had positive GM, the curve will look approximately something like this, a GZ curve. Now the vessel has negative GMs, the curve will change from 0 degree from upright condition up to the angle of Loll, this red portion. All the levers are negative. GZ is negative, means we have capsizing levers. At angle of Loll, GZ will become 0. So after the angle of Loll, we have positive GM and the normal curve starts. But if we observe the two curves, one with positive GM and the one with negative GM, I can see very clearly the GZ values are much reduced now. Also, range of stability doesn't start from 0 now. Range of stability starts from angle of Loll. And the angle of vanishing stability is also much reduced than the normal curve. So in other words, this vessel has a positive GM, it has righting levers, but it's very weak righting levers are there. So if the wind force increases and the ship heels beyond the angle of Loll, although there will be a righting lever, but it may be so weak that it may not be able to bring the vessel back to the angle of Loll, and she may even continue capsizing and come to this angle of vanishing stability. So in other words, it's a very dangerous situation. As if we know this situation has occurred, we need to immediately take action, and emergency must be activated on board and in the office, and action must be worked out very, very carefully, because wrong action can create disaster. So what should be the correct action? Remedial action. As we know, this situation has occurred due to the ship's center of gravity is above the metacenter. So primary focus is on lowering the ship's center of gravity below the transverse metacenter. What all can we do? So if we can ballast a double bottom tank with seawater, and the tank should be on the lower side. We can select a tank which has smallest moment of inertia. Means the width of the tank is small, tank is subdivided, and the width is smaller, so it will have small moment of inertia, which will create small free surface effect. Because once we start ballasting the DV tank, initially there will be a free surface effect until the time the tank is full, pressed up, there will be a free surface. So if the tank has small moment of inertia, the free surface effect will be least. Always ballast the lower side tank first. Means if the ship is lolled to starboard tank, then select the starboard DV tank. Because when we start ballasting the starboard DV tank, there will be an increase in the heel because of the list, but it will be very controlled. And as the G starts coming down, the effect of the negative GM on the heel will reduce, and the ship will start, the heel will start becoming lesser. So once the lower side is full, then only the higher side tank can be filled up. At the same time, then slack tanks, if there are any slack tanks, they can be, minimized, the free surface. That will also help to bring the G down. If you need to discharge, if your ship is still near the port and you can discharge cargo from deck, means above the ship's center of gravity, you must use preferably a shore crane. Because as you know, if you use a ship's crane or ship's derrick, as soon as you lift the cargo, the center of gravity of the weight of the cargo will shift to the derrick head, and that will again cause negative GM to increase. So that will be disastrous. So better use the shore crane to remove the cargo from deck. When you are discharging cargo from deck, in this case, the cargo from the higher side should be discharged first. not from the lower side. When we are ballasting, we ballast the lower side tank first. But if we are discharging, we discharge from the higher side tank, higher side of the vessel. So that's all for this angle of Loll, and I hope it helps people understand how important it is to follow the regulations about the intact stability and damage stability criteria. Okay, thank you very much. If you have any comments, you can put it down and I will be happy to answer them.